Yeah, well, hello, and yes, welcome to this online meetup. Now, yes, even though, well, with lockdown and everything, MicroPython is still going ahead and seeing a lot of attention, a lot of pull requests lately, a lot of more interest every day, and more use in products around the world. And we're trying to keep on top of things. Jim and I have been going through the pull request, trying to get the pull request backlog down to 0, which is our goal, and concentrate on making sure that stays really low. At this stage, issues are less important. I think pull requests are more important to deal with than issues. Of course, issues are important, but the pull requests are much more manageable to get down. And since the last release, which was 1.16 2 months ago, there's been a lot of stuff. Not really concentrating in one area, more just a lot of cleanups here and there and merging things that come up, that people bring up. A few things that are probably worth noting are, again, the MIM XRT port has had further additions like spy class, hardware spy, random number generators, improve VFS, and making it get up to speed with some of the other ports. So that's really good to see, and that's all been done by Robert HH. So that's really great to have other people contribute in that way. Some of the other things, so the JavaScript port, that was added quite a while ago and allows you to compile MicroPython via mscript and to JavaScript and then run that in Node. So MicroPython runs in Node in the sense that MicroPython is a bunch of JavaScript and Node runs that JavaScript and then that implements MicroPython, or it runs MicroPython. And you can also run it in the browser, so you can have a REPL or you could do other things. For example, run mpy cross to cross-compile code in the browser, which is one useful thing. But that was done a few years ago, and mscripton is sort of still up and coming. Well, I mean, mscripton has been around for a while, but there's a lot of work been done to it since then, to mscripton, mostly in regards of WASM. So using WASM as the output instead of JavaScript. So mscripton compiles your C code to WASM, which runs in the browser. There's still a bit of JavaScript there to wrap things up and glue it to the other parts of JavaScript, to the DOM and things like that. But so things have changed a bit there, and also mscripton went a long way adding asyncify support, which is a really interesting addition and really technical. So I really can't claim to understand it much, but the way JavaScript works, the execution model for JavaScript is that you run a piece of code until it completes, and then other code can run. And so when you have some code in a browser and some JavaScript runs, nothing else in the browser can happen in that tab until the JavaScript finishes, because it's the execution model is synchronous, or at least you have to wait till the JavaScript finishes. And so JavaScript should be short, sweet, short functions that do one task and then return. Of course, there's lots of things that have been added to get around this, like web workers and many other things, but you still have this fundamental limitation that JavaScript cannot hog the browser. Otherwise, the browser can't do anything. You can't render the HTML or the DOM. So to run MicroPython as a REPL in the browser, you can't just sit there and wait for input, because the JavaScript then is running forever. So you have to sort of return to the browser so it can process user input and then come back into the JavaScript code that's running MicroPython periodically. Now, to do that is tricky because you kind of got to save your state and then exit and then come back in again. And in particular, to do that with a long running program is really hard. So if you've got some code which takes 20 seconds to run, you can't, the browser would lock up for 20 seconds. So you've got to yield essentially to the browser every 100 milliseconds or something. And Asyncify is a way to do this automatically. So mscripton will compile your code to WASM and insert very special yielding points every now throughout the code, so that the code feels like it's running synchronously, but it's actually yielding to the browser every now and then. And this is pretty sophisticated transpilation or compilation on mscripton side, because it's really got to save the entire state of the program, and it's kind of like doing a long jump all the way out, because it's essentially running C code that's compiled to WASM, and it's got to save all the registers and all the state and everything, and then jump back out to the very outer loop to yield to the browser, and then it can come back in again and resume. So when you turn this Asyncify stuff on, your code is like 2 times slower and 10 times bigger or something, but at least it sort of works and it doesn't lock up the browser, which is important. So this was a really big step in mscripton, and the JavaScript port in MicroPython has now been updated to include Asyncify and be able to compile to WASM and run in a browser without blocking that browser. It's not full. The groundwork's been laid and that's been done. There's not currently any implementation of a REPL there, but that's coming soon. And so that's really nice. The other thing that comes along with Asyncify is the ability to scan the stack and registers in mscripton. So mscripton gives you 2 functions called literally scan registers and scan stack, and lets you think that you're running on a platform that has registers and has a stack, even though you've been emulated in WASM or JavaScript. And again, that ability to scan registers and stacks is requires long jump and so on within the mscripton emulation, and it's actually part of Asyncify. You need to enable Asyncify to have this register and stack scanning. So yeah, there's a lot of really nitty-gritty details there, and as I said, I don't understand them all, but it seems to work well now. And the JavaScript port previously had some problems with being able to scan all the root pointers for the garbage collection, and now it works a lot better. As in, I think it works perfectly in the sense that it does correctly scan everything. So that was a big thing. The change wasn't that big, but it's a big step for the JavaScript port. The other things, which another sort of noteworthy thing, is we moved around some files to put all of the to make sure in the lib directory is only third-party code, and all of the first-party MicroPython developed code is has been moved to shared directory. So there was some adjustment there of source code and repository layout, but I think definitely for the better to make sure things are a bit cleaner. You know what's a third-party library in /lib, and then anything that's developed as part of MicroPython is in /shared now. I mean, it's also in /py and /xmod and /ports, but /shared includes things like implementation of string copy and low level sort of helper functions. So I think, yeah, there's lots of other, as I said, lots of other tidying ups, more RP2, Raspberry Pi 2040 boards, some docs and auto build tools. Yeah, so improvements all around. There's one a few really good features that Jim will talk about, so I won't say anything about those. But oh yeah, the other thing also, the Nordic port got file system support with the VFS support. So it's now the same as other ports. You can have FAT or little FS, and it works exactly the same as all the other ports. So that's really good. That was by Glenn Ruben Backy, who wrote that about a year ago, but that was finally merged. Some docs for the Zephyr port, and yeah, so the other things that Jim will talk about. But yeah, lots of fixes here and there too. So I think, yeah, that's about it. I was supposed to do a release that I was hoping to have done version 1.17 release by now, but it's just a bit slow with COVID restrictions and kids. So that will hopefully come out in the next week, definitely before the end of this month. Otherwise, we miss the the month deadline. Yeah, and then there's a lot of stuff that can go in after the release comes. Ibrahim from OpenVM project has gotten Bluetooth and networking, Wi-Fi working for the RP2040 port, which is really cool. So that still needs to be reviewed, but in general, that I'm very happy with having that support there, as in that code. And yeah, still SAMD file system stuff to go through and merge, and from Peter, and yeah, a lot of stuff, but it's good.